Could you live off $20 a week? In 1933, that was a steel worker's full paycheck, if he was lucky enough to still have one. Rent alone could swallow half of it, and families had to stretch every dime across 7 days. How did they eat, save, and survive with almost nothing? Let's uncover what it really took to live through that week. What could you do with a $20 paycheck when a single mistake meant going hungry? In 1932, $20 meant life or struggle. That was the weekly wage for millions of American workers during the worst of the Great Depression. For context, bread cost 7 cents, a pound of hamburger, 12, a dozen eggs, 18. But that $20 had to cover everything: rent, food, heat, clothes, emergencies. One wrong move, and the cupboard went bare. Families lived by the envelope system. Rent took the first chunk, usually $8 to $12 a week for a small apartment or shared house. Then came food, but there was no luxury here. Dinner often meant potato soup, beans, or day-old bread with lard. Sometimes even meatless stews got stretched for days. Kids learned fast: waste nothing, because there wouldn't be more. Laundry soap got cut with baking soda. Coffee grounds were reused. Folks patched socks with twine. If something broke, you fixed it. If you couldn't, you went without. People cut each other's hair, share tools, and cook in bulk. A neighborhood pot of stew might feed 3 families. And when money ran dry, neighbors bartered: eggs for sewing, firewood for a few babysitting hours. But how long could this hold? As wages shrank, so did patience. Cities swelled with the desperate. Lines at soup kitchens stretched for blocks. Jobs were rare, and a paycheck felt like a lottery ticket. And yet, somehow, they made it stretch. So here's the real test. If $20 had to cover your entire week, how would you survive when rent alone could wipe it out by Tuesday? If your job paid $17 a week, how far could you really stretch it? $17. That was the going rate for a delivery boy, janitor, or factory hand in 1934. It meant hard hours, no health insurance, and 0 room for error. If you got sick or missed work, there was no backup plan, no second paycheck coming. So how did people stretch that $17? The answer starts with grit, planning, and sacrifice. A gallon of gas ran about 10 cents. That's good, unless you couldn't afford the car to begin with. Rent in cities like Chicago or Detroit hovered around $10 weekly. That left $7 for everything else. 7. That had to cover food, clothes, heat, bus fare, medicine, and emergencies. So you learned to cut deep. Dinner became bread, onions, and broth. Lunch? Leftovers or nothing. Many skipped meals to feed the kids. Families baked bread at home, grew potatoes in vacant lots, and cooked meatless casseroles with oats and onions as filler. Shoes were resold with cardboard. Kids wore hand-me-downs for years. Birthdays meant a slice of cake, nothing else. And still, people were saved. Every nickel mattered. Some families dropped pennies into mason jars labeled winter coal or doctor fund. It took discipline most can't imagine today. But what if $17 became $14 because hours got cut? What if a layoff hit next? That tension never left. You planned your life in case of collapse, not comfort. So what happens when you've done everything right and still come up short? Could stretching $17 mean trading health, heat, or dignity just to make it one more week? Could you keep a roof overhead when rent swallowed half your income? Picture this. It's 1933, and you make $18 a week. Sounds manageable until your landlord knocks. Rent's due. It's $9. Half your paycheck's gone before you even open the fridge. That's how most working families lived, paycheck to pillow. One misstep from sleeping outside. Boarding houses offered one room, one shared toilet, no heat. Yet they charged $7 to $10 a week. In Chicago, New York, or Boston, those rates barely budged, even while jobs vanished. You weren't paying for comfort. You paid for shelter, to avoid the shame of eviction and the cold bite of alleys. Rent came first, always. Families skipped meals to keep their beds. A 1934 survey in Cleveland found over 30% of tenants were behind on rent, yet landlords refused to lower costs. Why? Because mortgages still loomed. If they defaulted, they lost everything too. Some moved in with relatives, crowding two families into one-bedroom flats. Others took in boarders, strangers paying $2 a week for a corner and some privacy. Children slept in closets or on the floor. Entire neighborhoods shared washrooms and coal stoves. Those who couldn't pay turned to Hoovervilles, makeshift shantytowns built from wood scraps and cardboard. By 1932, nearly every major U.S. city had them. And yet, even there, people tried to maintain order, decency, and dignity. So if half your money went straight to rent, and prices weren't coming down, how would you keep a roof while still feeding your family? What did dinner look like when every meal depended on pennies and scraps? Dinner in the 1930s wasn't just about food. It was a survival strategy. With maybe $6 left after rent, you had to feed 5 people for 7 days. That meant cooking became a battlefield of creativity. Beans were king. 1 pound of dry beans cost around 5 cents and could stretch across 3 meals. Potatoes came next. Boiled, mashed, fried in lard if you had any. Cabbage stew, cornmeal mush, bread with bacon grease. And meat? Rare. A small chicken was a treat saved for Sundays or sickness. Women clipped recipes from newspapers promising 7 meals from 1 pot roast. Cornbread replaced sandwich bread. Apples, in season, became pie-filling snack or dinner. Dried prunes, molasses, oats, rice, anything shelf-stable became a staple. Kids brought leftover lunch to school in jars. No one complained. Everyone had the same. In fact, schools started meal programs to keep students alive. By 1935, the federal government was feeding 892,000 children in school lunch programs. Gardens popped up behind every house. Even cities had relief gardens. One in New Jersey grew 1.2 million pounds of food in 1933 alone. Families canned, jarred, dried, every scrap stored for winter. Still, most meals were quiet, simple, and slow. You chewed slower because there was less. You ate together because every meal was shared survival. So how do you cook 7 days of dinners with $6 and still find something to smile about around the table? When cash ran out, how did families trade skills, favors, and anything they had left? Cash was rare. Dignity wasn't. So when wallets went empty, people found other ways to stay afloat. Trading became survival, not strategy. In coal towns, one man fixed shoes in exchange for eggs. In Detroit, a barber cut hair for soup or bread. Across the Midwest, farmers swapped eggs for flour, milk for firewood. No receipt, no contracts, just trust, grit, and urgency. In 1933, over 300 self-run barter exchanges popped up across the U.S. One of the biggest was in California, the Unemployed Exchange Association in Oakland. It had over 100,000 members by late 1933. Members fixed roofs, repaired cars, or sewed clothes in exchange for credits they spent inside the co-op. It functioned like a full economy, run by people for people. Neighbors leaned on each other. A single mother might watch someone's children for a sack of potatoes. A teenager helped mend fences for fresh butter. Everyone had something to offer, even if it wasn't money. Skills became currency. Doctors took chickens. Dentists accepted coal. In Alabama, one man paid for surgery with 3 live pigs. No one laughed. Everyone understood. And people made it work. Not by hoarding, but by giving. Because survival meant staying connected. No one stood a chance alone. But when trading ran out, when there was nothing left to give, what do you sacrifice next to keep going? What did you sacrifice first, when money thinned out faster than hope? First went luxuries, if there were any to begin with. Candy, tobacco, a second pair of socks. Then it got harder. You stopped using butter, switched to lard, then to drippings. Coffee was reused. Tea leaves dried and steeped again. Sugar was cut. Meat disappeared, unless someone caught a rabbit. By 1932, U.S. meat consumption dropped to levels unseen in 40 years. Children's birthdays passed quietly. Toys, homemade, shoes, hand-me-downs with cardboard soles. You kept cutting until you reached the bone, and then cut again. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about what kept you human. Families delayed doctor visits, rationed heating coal, and washed clothes less often to save soap. If rent or food had to win, medicine lost. One winter, a Pennsylvania town reported children walking barefoot in snow, their boots soled to buy beans. And through all that, parents still shielded their kids. They smiled through empty plates. A man named Charles in Kansas gave up lunch for 2 years so his daughter could eat and stay in school. She never knew, he said. She thought I wasn't hungry. Mothers skipped meals first. Fathers hid worry under quiet. And children grew up fast, knowing silence meant sacrifice. So if food, heat, and medicine all fell to the bottom of the list, how much would you give up before something broke? How many side jobs would it take to keep your family steady for one more week? One job barely paid the rent. So most families worked 2, 3, sometimes 4. Sleep wasn't a guarantee. Steady meals weren't either. Factory workers hauled crates by day and dug graves by night. Teachers graded papers, then took laundry in from neighbors. Kids sold newspapers, shined shoes, and collected bottles. No one stayed idle, because stopping meant slipping. In 1934, a skilled carpenter in Ohio told the Chicago Tribune he patched roofs by day and cleaned out stables after dark. "I get home when the sun rises," he said. "Then I sleep if I'm lucky." His weekly earnings? $11, just enough to buy food, if nothing broke. Women turned homes into hustle zones. A mother in Arkansas mended neighbors' dresses, baked bread for sale, and taught piano lessons, all from the same front room. She earned $3 a week, enough for flour, beans, and lamp oil. Many took relief work from the Works Progress Administration. But those jobs weren't always reliable, and they paid just 45 cents an hour. Still, it beat nothing. In 1936, over 3.3 million Americans were on WPA rolls, building roads, schools, and murals, trading sweat for dignity. It wasn't about climbing. It was about surviving. Just one more week, one more check, one more plate of food on the table. But even after grinding 7 days a week, could you still save a single cent when every penny was already spoken for? Could you save a few cents a day when survival pulled every dollar from your hands? Saving felt like a joke, but people did it anyway. Even a nickel mattered. Sometimes it was the only thing standing between a full stomach and hunger. In many homes, saving started in silence. A father sliding 2 pennies into a coffee can when no one was looking. A mother folding away $1 behind a kitchen brick. Every coin felt like defiance, proof they hadn't given up yet. In 1932, national banks paid around 2.5% interest on savings accounts, but most people saved outside banks. They didn't trust the system, and many didn't have access, so they hid it in tin boxes, under mattresses, inside shoes. A Pennsylvania steelworker once saved $16 in coins over 3 years, just enough to buy winter boots for his kids. In Missouri, a family built a nickel board, a plank with 100 holes, each meant to hold a 5-cent piece. It took them 11 months to fill it. And the funny thing? Those who had the least often saved the hardest, because they knew there'd be no one to catch them. No insurance, no credit, no bailout. Saving wasn't about wealth. It was about security, a little control, a sliver of hope that tomorrow might hurt less than today. And that small, scraped-together stash, it sometimes made the difference between staying or losing everything. That world may be gone, but the habits, the grit, the genius they used, still worth remembering. Click the next video on your screen right now before it disappears. Another story is waiting for you.